Hello everyone, I'm back here with a speed paint. Today, I really felt like recording a video. I just got a new computer and I was just super excited, so I opened up Photoshop and just started messing around, I made this little sketch, and by that I mean I spent 4 hours sketching it out. But it's whatever. I couldn't be bothered to include the whole sketch because that would have just been way too long. It was like a 30-minute video, even though I was going 15 times the speed. Since I am doing some original characters here of mine, I thought it would be a great opportunity to talk to you guys about just that, original characters, common problems I see with them, other people having, common problems that I've had in the past, and just sort of giving my 2 cents on what I think of it. I have compiled a list of the 4 main problems I have experienced, and you may experience too, when it comes to creating OCs, or original characters. I feel like every person who's ever been interested in art or animation, or game design, or what have you, has made an original character at some point. Even like professional oil painters who do like realism and observation drawings all the time. If you have made a person, animal, or mythical creature, if you've ever drawn that before, that came out of your mind, that qualifies as an original character, to me anyway. But for most artists who are really into illustration and all of that, OCs are like your bread and butter, your ham and cheese. They're the thing you go to, the first thing you draw. Like in my case today, with opening Photoshop again for the first time in several months. With that, I've noticed over these past couple months that my OCs are kind of garbage. I'm just really not happy with them being the kind of perfectionists that I am when it comes to art. So I figured I could, do this little video here, and maybe a couple more, maybe make it even to a series even, and just share my thoughts on OCs and share my art with you guys as I work to try to improve my own. Here is the list I have compiled of the 4 main problems I think people have with OCs, or problems that I've had in the past. Now, once again, this is me sharing from my personal experience and my observations on how I think things should be. This is in no way me trying to instruct people on how to draw, or tell them what the right thing is, or telling people what they can and can't create. Just like take everything I say with a grain of salt. Here's what I have to say. For number 1, the first type of problem I think I have experienced with OCs in the past, anyway, is the dream OC. Now, this is the original character, or set of original characters, a whole cast even, that is just in your head, and you have this amazing concept, this perfect golden idea for it, and it's this whole world, and you have this whole story planned out that you've been thinking about for months, and you dream about it every night, and it's just so great, but you can't bring yourself to put it on paper for whatever reason. Maybe it's because you're afraid of messing up. Maybe it's because you're just playing lazy, like me, like I was. I was like, I'm gonna keep this in my head. And that was a really bad idea. Just because I wasn't improving, It's just the oldest saying in the book, just practice, 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 How are you going to improve if you can't practice? How are you going to not just improve your drawing skills, but develop your characters and make them better people, make them more interesting creatures to follow, I had to push myself to put the stuff down on paper and just figure out my characters. I think this issue is caused by a couple main problems. Number 1, just having a world that's too expansive. You have this idea that's too big. You have like this whole idea for like a TV show that's great that you want to make someday, and shoot for the stars. Dream big, right? But don't dream so big that you are dreaming beyond your skill. Dream big, but if you are the kind of person who is going to tear yourself apart if it does not look exactly like it does in your head, then you need to do one of 2 things. Either A, improve at art really, really quickly, which is the best option, or B, simplify your story a little bit. Don't overestimate your skill. Don't assume you're going to finish the comic or finish the animated short today, or in a month, or in a year maybe. Like, it could take a long time, but in order for these projects to work, And in order for you to not burn out on your ideas, you have to learn how to pace yourself and you have to learn how to plan it out. What you want to do is you want to get a piece of paper, right? And just write down and organize your whole world idea. Just like, first, just throw up everything you have on the paper. Like, okay, I have these many characters, these are my main characters, these are my side characters, this is my villain, and just put it all down. But try to simplify it. Just write down, start at the very top of the page, just write like a sentence or two that's just describing your story, like the elevator pitch that you're going to give to the TV studio or whatever when you're telling them about your amazing, fantastic idea. Then just draw or write down your main characters, your side characters, and your villain, and how many environments you have. And then do it. Just design it, just draw it. From that paper, organize a plan on how you're going to be able to make this happen. Because that's the only way that these things can get made. Not even that, just like draw your characters. It doesn't have to be the amazing thing it's going to be in your head. And if you assume it's going to be as perfect as it is in your head, you're setting yourself up for failure. The next issue I see that I've had in my OCs is the self-insert character. Now, this is what I describe as when you as a person basically make this character that is a representation of you directly. Now, an example of this would be this 12-year-old girl who, like me, she goes to school and maybe she's like picked on at school a little bit, but she has this amazing magical power. She can fly and she can punch through walls and she can just get back at everybody and get revenge on everyone. Now, that story is a really terrible idea. Now, I'm a firm believer that in order for a character to work, you need to put a little bit of yourself into every single one that you make, into all of your villains, all of your side characters, everyone. But they can't be entirely you. That's bad for a number of reasons. You don't want your character to just be a perfect person. If you are a person who is just choosing to use original characters and making these stories as a fantasy world in order to fantasize about yourself, then that's fine, that's whatever, you do you. But if you really are trying to develop this into a story that you can share with people, it really helps to focus on making your characters a balance of being like yourself, but not being yourself, Make them their own people. And make sure that they have an equal balance of flaws and strengths too. No one wants to see a Mary Sue who's just perfect, who's just ultra powerful, and can just defeat their enemies in the blink of an eye. Because that's boring. If they don't struggle, if they don't ever learn over the course of your story. The main way I think to fix this issue with the self-insert specifically is just share your characters with other people in your life and ask for an outside opinion. Like, hey, is this okay? Is this too cliche or whatever? And they'll give you honest feedback. They may not give you direct or specific feedback if they're not like a writer specifically, but they'll do what they can, and they will tell you. They will not be afraid to tell you. So you have to be willing to get that critique as well. And for me, I would hear about self-insert characters a lot when I was making my OCs when I was a preteen or whatever. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that's not me. That's not my characters. I don't do that. But in recent years, looking back at what I've done and looking at these characters now that you're seeing me paint, I realized I actually have had self-insert characters this whole time. Just making female characters, for one, who throughout the course of my life have always just been the same age as I have in real time, even if that doesn't make sense with the story. I remember back when I was 11, I made this knight character. I'll insert any pictures if I can find them. But she was just this knight who was in this medieval story, this fantasy world, and all her character had was she had long blonde hair, like me, and she just fought monsters and dragons, and she had to go on this epic quest, and she didn't really have any flaws, and she didn't really have anything about her that was anything. And that's not cool. And even today, these characters you see here are kind of redraws, I suppose. They're characters that I've kept with me and kept developing since I've been about 13 years old. When I originally created this character, and I'll go a little bit into some more details in our next segment, but she is a time traveler. That's her story, that's her thing. And she could just ultra powerfully bounce to whatever time period she wanted, and she could change things, she could manipulate things. She was the powerful one, and she was on top of every situation because she would travel into the past and automatically be smarter than everyone because she's from the future. And that's really awful. Part of my personal journey has been focusing on that same thing, developing characters and trying to make them interesting. I know I've been on this point for a really long time, but yeah, just try to avoid cliche characters like that and avoid making them versions of yourself too directly, and avoid making them ultra powerful. That's very important. Number 3 is kind of along the same line as the self-insert character, except a little bit the opposite, actually, if that makes any sense. Now, this is simply the blank slate cliche. Now, instead of this being a character that is 100% representative of you, this is a character that literally has no personality. You get locked into this cycle, or at least it's been that way for me, where you get so focused on, I'm just so excited about this character. They have this cool costume, and they can fly, and they have wings. I did have this one character when I was about 12 or 13 who was this weird half demon girl thing with these big green anime eyes, and she was just kind of there in my story, and she didn't really have any personality. She just sort of existed to look cool. And that is obviously not a very good idea for a character. They need to have something to them. They need to have a personality. Off the top of your head, you should be able to list 3 distinct features your character has. 3 distinct personality features anyway, not visual features. They need to have those different personality traits. An example of a good character would be they're super outgoing and positive for trait number 1. Sometimes they can be a bit tempered and take things too far for number 2. And for number 3, I don't know. You just need to give your characters those traits to make them resonate well. Like in the previous point, focus more on putting personality first as opposed to cool quirks and visual things. Personality always comes first. Your characters need to feel human, even if they're not human. You need to be able to make an audience connect with them on a base level. That is very important. And number 4, my last point, I know this has been very story focused so far this whole recording, but lastly, visuals. Visually boring characters. Now, this is an example where I was kind of, in the video, intentionally trying to make these characters where by looking at these 2 characters you see here, you would have no idea what their story is. So I'm gonna deliver that to you right now. So the story of these 2 characters that I created when I was 13 and still use to this day is that this guy right here, his name is Elliot, and he is a boy who lived on a farm in England in the 1500s, right? And so then this girl, like I mentioned, she's a time traveler. Her name is Victoria. One day, she happens to be visiting his time period in the 1500s, and through some circumstance of events, they accidentally get knocked back in time all the way back to the prehistoric era. And so, through those events, they are forced to work together to find their way back to their own time periods and slowly fall in love as the story goes on. All of that whole thing I just mentioned, you would never be able to infer from this painting here. Because what is it? It's just 2 characters, and they're kind of looking at each other a little bit. These characters, they're just people who are sitting. There's nothing there. There's nothing to convey that. And really, the only way to fix this is to just design your characters better and to go through a real design process. Now, there's an amazing video on designing characters out there by Draw with Jazza, who is a much more subscribed than me, or YouTuber. And he goes through the design process of creating characters and how you start with that base outline, that idea you have in your head, and how you go through developing it and changing it to make the characters read better, to make them stand out from one another. That's another thing. You don't want all of your characters to be the same height, size, and weight. You want them to be very visually different from each other. And you also just want to make sure you build a world. Practicing designing environments, I think, is really important, and putting your characters in a place can help tell that story better and tell the audience more about where they are and who they are. So, as my illustrations in this series go on, you are going to hopefully start to see that more, see me incorporating more environments and more of that story into the characters as the style and design changes. Or that's the plan anyway. With that, I don't know how long this recording is. I'm gonna just leave you here to watch the rest of the speed paint if it isn't already over. But anyway, yeah. So I hope you enjoy continuing to watch this. If anyone's wondering, I am using Photoshop CC. I'm lucky enough to have it. Yeah, I get it through my school, so, hopefully that's gonna keep happening for long enough for me to continue making videos. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little speed paint here and some of my thoughts on OCs and how to improve them and some mistakes I've made in the past. So, if you enjoyed it, leave a like if you feel like it. And in the description, if you're interested in seeing more of my art, I made a video looking at all of my cringy old art from when I was like an actual toddler. If you're interested in that, please check that out, link in the description. And yeah, please stick around for more videos. My uploads may not be as frequent as I want them to, but I'm trying to get better. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.